Welcome, everybody. We've got about 1 minute before 6:30. We'll start right at 6:30, but just wanted to say hi. Well, I guess it is 6:30 right now, so we'll go ahead and get started. Today, this is our sixth class in the Cooking with Plants series. We're halfway through the year, which is hard to believe. In tonight's class, we're going to be focusing on meal prep. So I've got a quick little presentation, and then we're going to do 4 recipes that are really good for meal prepping. So for those of you who, and I guess before we get started, just want to make sure too that folks know the Q&A box is going to be monitored. So my colleague, Lisa, she will be answering any questions you drop into that. Folks are muted and everybody's video is off, not because we don't want you to ask questions, but because we are recording this and it helps us have a cleaner recording. So when you go back to watch it, you can focus in on the content. And if you need closed captioning, at the top of your screen, there should be 3 dots that say more. Click on those, go to language and speech options, and then click closed captioning. And you should see text populate right on your screen. And I'll do my best to enunciate so that it comes through clearly for you. So for those of you who I have not had the pleasure of meeting, I'm Kelly Wilson. I'm a registered dietitian here with our lifestyle medicine team. I am, like I said, registered in nutrition, board certified in lifestyle medicine. Lifestyle medicine is the field of medicine that focuses on disease treatment, reversal, and prevention through 6 key pillars. Nutrition, whole food, plant forward diet. What we're talking about in this class is one of those pillars. How we move our body is another. Stress reduction, social connection, so positive social relationships, restorative sleep, and avoiding risky substances are the others. So in our practice here at Trinity Health Ann Arbor, which includes more than just me, we focus on each of those 6 pillars when we're talking to patients, either in one-on-one coaching situations or through our classes. I also have some training in culinary genomics, which basically is just the science and art of how food and cooking influence our genes. I was a farmer for a handful of years, so I bring that perspective to our conversations. And I'm really excited to be teaching these classes because I believe anybody can cook. It doesn't have to be hard or complicated. You don't have to have fancy ingredients or fancy tools to make food taste good. And I wholeheartedly believe that healthy food can taste good. You don't have to suffer for your health with bland, boring food. And hopefully the recipes in this class series have proven that to you already. And you'll learn some more tonight. So like I mentioned, I'm not the only one here on our lifestyle medicine team. All these beautiful smiling faces on your screen are also part of our team. Lisa McDowell is here with me tonight. We've got our 2 physician partners, Dr. Lou and Dr. Daniel. Abby focuses on colleagues. Clisty and Laura focus on our diabetes. And then I get the pleasure of focusing on culinary education like these classes. Like I said, we're on class 6. So today we're focused on batch cooking. If you missed any of our other classes and you want to go back and watch the recordings or access the recipes, if you hold up your phone in the photo app to that QR code, it'll take you to our class website where you can access all the recordings, recipes, handouts that we shared for any of these classes. It's also where you can register for any future classes if you only happen to register for this class and you want to participate in future classes. So tonight we are focusing on meal prep strategies. So we're going to talk through several different approaches to meal prep, get you set up with some tips for success, and then we're going to do 4 recipes together. And just another quick plug for that website. We are going to be talking about some strategies that build off of content that we talked about in class 1, which was stock pantry. So if you haven't participated in that class, go back to the website, watch the recording, or at least look at the handouts so that your pantry is well set up, because that'll set you up for success for doing any meal prep. Like I say before, all of our classes, just want to remind folks that this class focuses on general health and not treatment of a specific disease. So I do use ingredients like olive oil and salt that are perfectly fine for healthy individuals to consume. If you have a specific heart condition or newly diagnosed diabetes, you may want to talk to your physician or your registered dietitian before you make any drastic changes. Most of these recipes are full of foods that you can eat no matter who you are. But if you have a new chronic health condition, please speak to your provider before making any drastic changes to your diet. All right, so let's get started diving into the heart of things here. So when I think about meal prep, we all might have very different ideas of what this means, and I think that's because there's a lot of different strategies and approaches, and we'll talk about that. When I think about meal prep, I'm thinking about preparing whole meals or larger batches of time-consuming ingredients like grains or dry beans ahead of time to help make it easier to cook throughout the week, to help save time and energy when I'm busy working or doing daily life things. And the whole point of this is to just make life easier for you. So when we're talking about the various strategies and approaches, pick what works for you and your lifestyle. You don't have to force yourself into one of these strategies. Just pick and choose from each to make it work for you and your lifestyle. So why even think about meal prepping in the first place? Well, first and foremost, it can save time, like we mentioned. When you're planning ahead, you've got some already prepared ingredients. Meals can come together in a snap. Or if you're doing a larger batch cooking and you have meals portioned out, you don't even have to cook. It's just reheating. So it can save you some time. It can save money because you're not wasting food. You're utilizing all the ingredients that are in your fridge or your pantry, and you're not likely to eat out as often when you've got quick options right there at home. It can decrease stress because I don't know about you, but one of the most stressful things to me at times is we get to the end of a busy day and I have no idea what I'm putting together on the table and I'm hungry and I'm tired. Nobody likes to be in that position. So when you're doing some meal prep, it eliminates that scenario, decreases the stress and pressure of the question, what's for dinner? And it also can help make eating these healthful, nutrient-dense foods easier. Some of these ingredients, like some grains and some beans, they're time intensive to cook. So if you can set aside some time during the weekend or on a day where you've got a little bit more flexibility in your schedule, it can make it easier for you to incorporate those foods throughout the rest of the week. So let's talk about a couple of different strategies that you might want to incorporate for meal prepping. So the first strategy would be just prepping individual ingredients. This could be based off of recipes that you've got in mind that you're planning to make throughout the week, or it could just be you preparing ingredients that you commonly enjoy eating. This strategy is really good for folks who don't want to be pigeonholed into a specific plan or a specific recipe necessarily for the week, but want a little bit more flexibility and creativity when it comes to mealtime, game time. This is honestly the approach that we take in my house a lot because my partner is really creative in the kitchen and likes to, in the moment decide what we're eating versus plan it out ahead. So having some of these ingredients prepped ahead of time helps us cut down on our time in the kitchen with that method. So things that you would want to prep ahead of time if you're taking this ingredient approach would be whole grains. So things like brown rice, which take 30 to 40 minutes to cook, and other starches like potatoes, which might take a long time to roast in the oven. And then you could totally cook even your faster cooking grains like quinoa or millet. They only take about 20 minutes or so to cook, but just having those set aside, again, makes grain bowls or other meals come together really quickly. You could prep produce. So I'm sure you've seen in the grocery store the pre-shredded bags of carrots, the chopped up peppers and chopped up onions. You can save yourself some time and some money by basically creating those in your own home, and then you have them ready to go to just dump into your stir fry or whatever dish that you're making throughout the week. With protein, so think about things like tofu and tempeh, cooking a big pot of beans. You can drain and marinate your tofu and your tempeh ahead of time. So that could, on a Sunday, you could drain your tofu, marinate it for a couple days, and then you're cooking it on Tuesday, and you've got a lot of good flavor infused into that tofu. And then don't forget, if you're taking this approach, to think about how you're sprinkling in flavor. Last month, we spent a whole class on flavor, a lot of great recipes. So if you missed that class, go back and at least look at the recipes, but watch the recording too if you would like. But in this strategy, making sure you've got a sauce like a hummus or a pesto, or you're making some sort of salad dressing to toss on your veggies is a really good strategy, again, to be able to pull all these ingredients together in a way that you're really going to enjoy. The next strategy, I think this is kind of what a lot of people think of when they think of meal prep, is to cook a large portion of something, portion it out into usable quantities, and then freeze it. So what's listed here on the screen are typical styles of dishes that freeze really well. So this would be like you would set aside some time on the weekend, maybe cook several different recipes, portion it out into glass containers or freezer bags, and then stick it in the freezer. If you follow this method, the biggest thing that you want to make sure is to cool down the hot ingredients before you put them into your freezer, because that, if you put it into your freezer hot, it'll defrost the food around you and lower the temperature ultimately of your freezer and could cause some food safety issues. So cool the food before you throw it into your freezer. This method requires a little bit more planning because you need to know what recipes you're making ahead of time. So if you're not a planner, this may not be the method for you, but if you're okay with kind of planning out your grocery list by some recipes or flipping through a cookbook to find your options, this might be an exciting option for you. The next strategy is very similar to the other, but instead of freezing, you're making a big batch of something and then keeping it in your fridge for a few days so you have leftovers to eat from. Most any recipe works for this method. You could, again, set aside some time on the weekend to cook a large volume of a couple recipes to stock up your fridge for the week. Or when you do have time to cook on a weeknight, you're just making a larger volume of something and then holding that over for a few days. So this method works well for folks who are okay eating the same thing for a couple meals. They're fine with repetition. If that's not you, then one of the other strategies might be more successful for you. And the last strategy that we'll talk about, which is one of the most fun, is to make meal prep a social activity. So get together with 2 or 3 friends, pick a couple different recipes. Everybody's cooking a double, triple batch of their one recipe, and then you just swap recipes or containers of those different recipes at the end of that cooking session. So you get the lifestyle medicine benefits from social connection and positive relationships, and then you get a little bit more meal variety. So this is a really great way to combine spending time and catching up with your friends while also setting yourself up for meal success throughout the week. And then, like I said, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to this. All of these strategies can work for everyone in various forms. Pick and choose kind of what one fits your lifestyle the best. Some things to keep in mind before you dive into meal prep is to make sure, if you're going to do the method where you're making large volumes and freezing stuff, make sure that you have the freezer space to accommodate that. Make sure that you've got the fridge space, again, also if you're going to cook large volumes of items, and get good containers for freezing. So glass, while I love that as a storage container in general, it does have a higher likelihood of breaking and shattering. So I would stick with you can still use glass in the freezer. Just make sure you leave ample space in the container so that as the food expands, when it freezes, it doesn't shatter and break that glass. And again, cool your items before freezing. There are freezer-specific Ziploc baggies that work really well. And if you have a soup or a stew, putting it in a Ziploc baggie, laying it flat on a sheet tray, and sticking it in the freezer so it freezes in a flat block makes it really easy for storing and stacking and organization in your freezer. And then label and date everything. I know there have been many times where I just throw something in the freezer. I'm certain I'm going to remember what that is when I dig in my freezer a month later, only to go back and find I don't know what this mystery block of food is, and then I'm hesitant to defrost it because I'm not sure what I'm getting. So stick a piece of masking tape on your containers or your bags, write the date, and then write what food it is. And the date will also help you practice first in, first out, which is a good rule of thumb to make sure that you're eating the oldest food first, because the food in our freezer has about a 2 to 3 month shelf life. So if you have the date labeled on your food, you're more likely to be able to use that older food first and not hold over the food in your freezer for too long. Go back, like I said, to that pantry staples class, because that's really going to help you set you up for success for meal prepping. When we've got a well-stocked pantry, we typically have the things we need to pull together quick meals. Some helpful things to have in terms of kitchen tools to set you up for success. Storage containers, like I talked about, a pressure cooker or multi-cooker, like a Instapot, an immersion blender. We're going to use one of those tonight, so you'll get to see that. And then sheet pans come in really handy for the roasting off and prepping large batches of veggies. And then, like I said, just pick your style of meal prepping and make a plan for how you're going to incorporate it into your weeks ahead. If you're not currently a meal prepper and you're going to try one of these new strategies, shoot me an email. Let me know how it goes. I would love to hear what recipes you tried, what strategy and approach worked for you. Love to hear about your success. All right, so now the fun part, we're going to get to some cooking. A couple things here. First, our first recipe is a lentil power bowl. So this recipe is from Oh She Glows, which is a food blog. I realize I don't have my knife. And it's a really nice make ahead on the weekend, have a big batch. It doesn't freeze very well. So this is a recipe that if you're going to do the method where you make a big batch and then hold it in your fridge, this would be a good recipe for that method. So we're first going to start with, and I'm going to tilt my camera down here so hopefully you can see this. We're going to start with an onion. So I just sliced the top, the stem end off the onion, and I'm peeling it. Just want to show you real quick how to cut this, and we're going to throw this in our pan, which I am going to turn on. Yeah. Got that on. Okay, so I've got the root end of the onion down on the cutting board. I slice down the middle. I've got these lines running along, these are little veins running along the onion. I'm going to take the tip of my chef knife and slice down those lines. They're they're nice little guidelines that are helping me keep even spacing as I'm cutting this onion. And hopefully you can tell I'm making a C claw with my non-cutting hand to kind of keep my fingers out of the way. Now I'm slicing the opposite direction, and we're getting these nice, even sized onion pieces. So we're going to go ahead and stick that into our pan here. Get that sauteing. Got a couple little pieces here that didn't quite go. So we're going to get that going. That into our pan. All right, so we're just going to let that saute for a few minutes here. And while that is sauteing, we are going to cut up one bell pepper. So I've got this orange bell pepper. You could use any color that you wanted to. Doesn't matter. And I am going to slice the bottom. So I'm laying it on its side, slicing the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and slice the top off here. And then I am just going to make straight cuts down the side. And voila, we've got this we don't need, so we're going to toss that away. Other veggie scraps. All right, and then we are just going to make long slices across our pepper to get little matchsticks. Just do that across the whole pepper. And we're going to gather those together in a little pile here. And slice into, oops, I'm just going for a dice. So something about that size, about the size of the tip of your finger. It doesn't have to be super small. This is kind of like a warm grain salad is what this ends up being. So you don't need super small pieces. I'm taking the top of the pepper and just kind of rotating around, and I'm going to do the same thing. Just get that diced up. Okay, and here the onions sizzling. Sounds like they're starting to cook. Go ahead and add these peppers to that. Let those saute together, and we're going to cook them until the onion is translucent. And while that is cooking, we're going to prep one of our ingredients that we're going to use towards the end here. We're going to do some parsley. So we need about a half cup of parsley at the end of this recipe. So I'm going to just pull out, this was my bunch. I pulled out about a third of that bunch, and that's what we're going to chop up for the end here. And I'm going to give these guys a little bit of a stir. I'll stick. They're starting to look good. While those are sauteing, actually, you know what? We're gonna go right into adding these. We're gonna add in. We've got some diced tomatoes. So this is probably about 2 cups of diced cherry tomatoes, and then I've got an 8-ounce package of sliced mushrooms as well that are gonna go into the dish. So the onion, that's quite there. So before we add those in, we're going to go ahead and cut up this parsley and then set it aside for the end. So for the bunch of parsley, I'm going to trim off these ends, set them aside, grab a bowl here. And I think we've shown this before in class, but just wanted to make sure folks saw some herb cutting. I'm just rolling up these herbs, and then I'm going to make thin slices, rocking motion with my knife. The tip of my knife is on the cutting board. Just kind of nice thin slices all the way down. And then I'm going to go back over the opposite direction. My knife doesn't have to be super fine. And this parsley is adding some really nice polyphenols that help fight inflammation into this dish. This dish is really chock full of nutrition. We're getting organosulfur compounds from the onions. We're getting vitamin C from peppers. We're getting anti-cancer polyphenols from the mushrooms and from the tomatoes. So I'm going to add in those tomatoes in here. Going to add a little bit of moisture to help keep this all from sticking. Good. And the tomatoes have lycopene, and when we cook tomato product, eat cooked tomato product, our body's actually better able to absorb that lycopene, and lycopene is a very potent antioxidant. We're going to add in our mushrooms. So these are just white button mushrooms that were sliced. Okay, you could use any kind of mushroom you prefer here. Typically, when I'm preparing the mushrooms, if they're a little bit dirty, instead of washing them in the water, I'm going to take a piece of paper towel and wipe them off. If you wash them under water, they're kind of like sponges, and they'll start to absorb that water, and they might get a little mushy in your cooking process. All right, I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit, and speaking of water, I'm going to add a little bit to this. We didn't add any oil into this pan, so things are sticking just a little bit. So what you can do is just add in a little bit of water instead, and we're kind of water sauteing, or, essentially steaming these veggies a little bit. Okay, so we're going to let those cook for a couple minutes. We're going to put our parsley from our cutting board into a bowl here. And then we're going to make a quick other recipe while those onions and peppers are cooking. So our quick in-between recipe, we've got, so you can see this tray here, we have got some chia seeds for some chia seed pudding. So this is a really great breakfast option or a dessert option. I like making a big batch of this at the start of the week, so then I have it to snack on or eat throughout the week. And it takes a little bit of time for the chia seeds to absorb. So this is a good make ahead recipe. It does not freeze well. So this is, again, one of those recipes that you want to make and then hold in your fridge. So in this bowl here, I've got 2 cups of blueberries that were frozen and have now been defrosted. You could use any kind of fruit that you want. Any kind of like berry would lend itself really well to this. Fresh or frozen, doesn't matter. If it's frozen, defrost before you make the recipe. So we've got 2 cups of blueberries, about a quarter teaspoon, little less, of cinnamon on top of those blueberries. I've got some chia seeds, about ½ cup of chia seeds. Chia seeds are a really good source of plant-based calcium, omega-3 fatty acids. They absorb 10 times their weight in water, so they're really good at gelling and sticking things together and helping with hydration. I've got a plant-based milk. So this is an oat milk, an almond milk. I just lied. When you're searching for your plant-based milks, look for ones that are free from added sugar, so are unsweetened. There's 1½ cups of this almond milk that are going into this dish. And also, when you're searching for your plant-based milks, look for ones that are fortified with calcium. Okay, and then we've got a tablespoon of maple syrup. Let's go in here. And a teaspoon of vanilla extract. You could totally skip the syrup if you wanted to and just stick with the vanilla extract, and maybe increase the cinnamon a little bit. Okay, so now that's our pudding. You can see it's a little soupy right now, but what happens, we're going to set this in the fridge and we're going to revisit this at the end of class. Typically, you would set this in the fridge overnight, but by the end of class, we should start to see some gelling and thickening, so you can start to see the difference. So we'll set that aside for now and come back to that at the end here. All right, let's go check on our pan. Things are bubbling away. I've got a couple cloves of garlic we're going to add in here. And saute that for a little bit. Garlic is one of those ingredients. I think we've talked about it before, but as you're prepping your ingredients and getting them ready for making your dish, garlic's probably one of the ingredients you want to start prepping. It's good to let it sit for about 10 minutes after it's chopped to let the allinase enzymes do their work to fully develop allicin, which is a potent anti-inflammatory agent, powerful polyphenol. So let it sit for that 10 minutes to make sure we can get those good health benefits in our dish. So this is looking pretty good to me. So what I think we're going to do is start to add in our other ingredients. Actually, we're going to turn this off, pause for a second, and we're going to make our dressing. So this dish has a tahini-based dressing, and I know you can't see me yet, but I'm going to turn, so hopefully you will be able to. Hopefully you're seeing there we go. Okay, so we've got a couple tablespoons of olive oil, 2 cloves of garlic, a 1/4 cup of tahini. Tahini is just ground up sesame seeds. You'll often find it in the peanut butter aisle, or if you've got a world food section in your grocery store, you might find it there too. And sesame seeds are a good source of calcium, so good plant-based calcium option. We've got a 1/4 cup of nutritional yeast, which is often fortified with B12, which is something, if you go fully plant-based, B12 is found in animal food. So having a fortified source of B12 or taking a B12 supplement is an important thing to do. All right, so we're going to blend this up real quick. This is an immersion blender that has a blender base on it. Okay, and should be good to go. Let's just check that. Okay, so fairly smooth, creamy dressing. We're going to add that onto, oh, you know what? I forgot. We've got 1/2 cup of lemon juice that goes in here as well. Mix that in. Wondered why it was looking a little skimpy. Right. Blend that in real quick. All right. So there we go. Nice, creamy, no dairy involved in that, but it's a really nice, creamy dressing. We're going to go back over to our skillet now and add in our remaining ingredient. So our last few ingredients here, we've got some spinach. We've got 2 cups of spinach. We're just going to add that in here. Give it a stir to wilt. I'm going to turn my skillet back on because I did turn it off. Okay, in the spinach, you're getting good folate, and it is a plant-based source of iron too. And it's better absorbed if you splash a little lemon juice or lime juice on it, get some citric acid or vitamin C in there. Okay, so we've got that mixed in there. We've got 1 cup of lentils that's cooked, so it expands to about 3 cups of lentils. We're putting, these are the green lentils, so different than the red ones. These green ones cook in about 20 minutes, about a 1 to 3 cup ratio. So 1 cup of lentils to 3 cups of boiling water, and you cook it about 20 minutes until all the water is gone and the lentils aren't hard or firm in the center. Stir those in. Then we've got millet. So this is a whole grain here that I cooked 1 cup of it dry, 1 dry cup. Put that in here. And millet, the ratio for cooking millet, it's 1 cup of grain to 2 cups of liquid. And that also took about 20 minutes to cook. So we're breaking that up, stirring that in here. Okay, and then we add our creamy tahini sauce. Yeah. Give that a good stir to get, we're just looking to like mix this up evenly. The sauce doesn't need to cook. We just want to evenly disperse that flavor throughout the dish. And the nutritional yeast in that dressing, it's really nice. It lends kind of like a cheesy consistency and flavor. Well, not really consistency. The tahini is more of that like melted cheesy consistency, but the nutritional yeast is more of that Parmesan-y cheese kind of flavor. Okay, so that's looking pretty good to me there. And then we just top with our fresh parsley, turn off the heat, and incorporate that. And look at how beautiful that is, like all the colors from the tomatoes and the pepper and the green from the parsley. You're getting so much good soluble fiber from the lentils. Like, this is not only a beautiful dish to the eye, but it's really, really nutrient dense as well. So there you go. This is great just as it is, as a meal. I like throwing this on top of like green salad too, to increase the veggies a little bit. Throw some shredded carrots in here too. You can kind of make it your own with whatever veggies you've got on hand. So I'm going to set this aside. Well, actually, we'll just leave it there because it's hot, so we'll just let that aside. But I'm going to give you that's okay. So, thank you. And we're going to move on to our next recipe. So our next recipe is some burgers, some black bean and sweet potato burgers from the Fiber Fueled cookbook. So we're going to, we'll just put that over here. Thank you. Sorry, that one's full. We've got full trays going on here. All right. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. Just moving some cords around. Okay, so this recipe, lots of ingredients. This is definitely one of those recipes that you want to plan some time for because there are a lot of steps. We did some of the prep work ahead, so it's going to come together a lot faster tonight. And I'll talk you through what we did. So I've got this food processor right here, and we are going to start by adding 3 cups of, we've got some sweet potatoes. So 3 cups of sweet potatoes that were peeled and then chopped and steamed. So I use my Instapot for this. 1 minute, high pressure, then release with a little bit of water in the Instapot. You could steam these in a steamer basket on the stovetop or microwave them covered with a little bit of water in the bowl for about 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, we're going to add those into our food processor here. We've got 1 can of black beans that was drained and rinsed to decrease some of the sodium. I've set aside a 1/3 cup that we're going to mix into the dish after we've pulverized these other ingredients together. We have got 1.5 cups of shredded carrots that Lisa so nicely shredded for us. going in here. And then we've also got 1 cup of green onions or scallions that were chopped, 1 bell pepper diced finely, and then 2/3 cup of cilantro diced. We're gonna see if all of this fits into our food processor. This one's a little bit smaller than the one I have at home. It's okay. We might just have to do some multiple batches here. Well, no. Okay, we're gonna make it work. We're gonna make it work. It all fits. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right, then we've got, about 1/4 cup of fresh lime juice. That's going in here. And then we're gonna add about 1 teaspoon of lime zest. So I've got a lime. Zest is just the rind. So when a recipe calls for zest, I typically try to buy an organic citrus fruit. It's typically citrus that you're zesting, because the outer rind is what comes in contact with those pesticides. It's not totally necessary, but just something to consider. So we're going to go for about 1 teaspoon. This is a microplane zester. It's got tiny little holes on it. So we're gonna, and that teaspoon is gonna be not quite all of the lime rind, but it's gonna be a good amount of it. So I'm just gonna kind of go around. Bonus of this is that it smells really good while you're doing it, and then your hands smell really good. Kind of energizing smells and flavors. And why we're doing the zest and the lime juice is the zest just adds like a more intense kind of vibrancy that will enhance that vibrancy of the juice as well. So I think we're getting pretty close to 1 teaspoon there. So we're going to go ahead and stop. Shake off the underside of this. And then, where did I do it? There's my lid. Okay. So we're just going to pulse this. We don't want to completely emulsify or mix together this entire mixture. We want there to still be a little bit of texture so that we get a little bit more bite in our burger. So pulse. Okay, and I'm gonna stop and mix real quick here. But veggies and beans aren't getting down in there. So we're just looking for things to be in a little bit smaller pieces than that they are now, mixed together, still again with a little bit of texture. We don't want this to be totally smooth. That'll enhance our experience with these burgers. Oops. Okay. Oops. One more time of mixing, then I'll show you kind of what we're going for. We're almost there. Just need to pulse it a little bit more time. This food processor is probably a little bit small for the volume that we're doing here. So should have probably done this in 2 batches, but you know, that's okay. It'll still work out. So we're gonna call that good. So, all right, I don't know if you can see kind of what our texture is looking like here. So you can see about half of it is smaller pieces and smoother, and then we still got some larger chunks in there too. So we've got a good mixture. That's what we're going for. So now all we do is mix our remaining ingredients together. So we're gonna pour all of this into a mixing bowl, which I'm gonna tip so that you can see. So pour in our mixture into a large mixing bowl here. And we've got some spices and herbs that we'll add in here along with some oats. Right, so that's that. We've got 6 tablespoons. The recipe calls for breadcrumbs, but you could totally, oh, I guess you can probably see that better now, the texture and how, it's smooth but in some places, but again, there's still some larger pieces in texture there. So the recipe calls for 6 tablespoons of breadcrumbs. I'm substituting in 6 tablespoons of oats that I pulsed in a spice grinder. You could do that in your food processor too. It works exactly the same way. We're getting a little bit more soluble fiber, which is good for our heart health, for cholesterol. Adding that in there. We've got that third cup of beans that we reserved from the drained can. We've got about a teaspoon or half teaspoon of salt. Got a teaspoon of chili powder, or you could use chipotle powder as well. And there's about a quarter teaspoon of cayenne. If you don't like the flavor or spice of cayenne, you can totally leave it out. Teaspoon of oregano. Teaspoon of cumin. That's adding kind of a smoky flavor. This paprika, about a teaspoon of that, is also adding some nice smokiness to the dish. And then, well, let's mix that up together first. I'll mix that all together. And I'm just looking to incorporate those oats fully. Pretty good. And we're going to add, we've got these chia seeds. So this is 2 tablespoons of chia seed that was mixed with about 5 tablespoons of water, whisked together with a fork and let to sit. So as you can see, it's a more viscous, it's a much thicker consistency than that chia seed pudding that we just started off making. So this is what happens when you let the chia sit with liquid for a while. This chia seed, like I said, not only is it adding some calcium and some omega-3 fatty acids, this chia is acting as a binder for these burgers, gonna help them stick together really well. All right, so we're getting that, just trying to make sure the chia is evenly dispersed throughout the dish. Okay. And then our final 2 ingredients, we've got 1.5 cups of cooked quinoa. So this is that quinoa. Again, that's a grain that cooks in about 20 minutes. This dish is really good to make when you have maybe made big batches of grains and have extras that you want to incorporate into something. And then I've got 1.25 cup of cooked brown rice that's going into here as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of ingredients, so a lot of steps to get to this point. So again, this is one of those recipes that it's good for meal prepping and planning ahead. We're just working to incorporate the rice and the quinoa out the whole batch here. And then once we have everything mixed together, we'll form our patties. We're going to use a 1/3 cup measuring cup to portion out the mixture here, and you'll get about 15 patties from this recipe using that portion sizing. These patties will hold in your fridge for about 4 days or in your freezer for a few months. And if you decide to freeze them, the best strategy for that is to line them up on form the patties and then line them up on a sheet tray in a single layer. Put them in your freezer, and then once they're frozen all the way through, either wrap them up individually, throw them in a freezer bag, or in one of your airtight containers, and then stick it back in the freezer. Okay, so that looks pretty well mixed to me now. What we're going to do is I've got a sheet tray with parchment paper. Parchment paper is going to help keep these burgers from sticking to our sheet tray. I'm going to set that next to us here. I'm going to take my measuring cup, And we are going to plop this into our hands here. Got this nice, I'm just kind of mushing it into a patty shape, sticking it on my tray, pressing down with the back of my hand. And I do that until I've got this tray covered and the mixture's all gone. And you bake that in the oven for about 30 minutes, 25 to 30 minutes, flipping halfway through. And then when you take it out, you get a beautiful burger that looks just like this. And if you've ever made veggie burgers before, a lot of them are really crumbly and don't stay together. This burger has a really good texture. It stays together really well, holds up to actually being on a bun very nicely. So that's what the finished product looks like. All right, we've got one more recipe. We're gonna do a vegan lasagna from the cookbook Plant You. If you aren't familiar with this cookbook, it's a really fabulous one for folks of any skill level with cooking. Gives you some really solid foundational recipes that, you know, as you start to get more comfortable in the kitchen, you can experiment with adding different flavors and seasonings to, and, you know, making your own. So the veggie lasagna we're gonna make, we've got some brown rice noodles here. These are the Tinkyada pasta brand brown rice noodles. You don't have to pre-cook them. You can just stick them right in your dish as is. You can use, it doesn't have to be brown rice. You could use any whole grain lasagna noodle. That's just kind of what I chose tonight. So to start, we're going to go back over to our stovetop. I've got 2 containers of pasta sauce that are in this saucepan. I used the Newman's Own Saccaroni pasta sauce just because it has some extra veggies in it, and I personally like the flavor of it. You could use whatever pasta sauce you prefer. Just look for sauces that use olive oil as the healthy fat included in them and that don't have any added sugar or artificial sweeteners added to them. You just want tomatoes, veggies, olive oil, salt, kind of basic ingredients. Okay, so we're going to turn this on. I've got about a teaspoon of garlic powder added in here as well. We've got couple cups of spinach that has been chopped that's going in here. We've got a bell pepper that has been finely diced, and we've got about 8 ounces of white button mushrooms that have been finely chopped as well. And those are just going right into this mixture. And we're gonna stir that up. And all we're doing is warming the sauce and kind of cooking those veggies just a little bit before they're going to go into our oven with our lasagna. Okay, so we're going to mix that up. You can see here, just incorporated those all in there. It's a bright, beautiful, kind of Christmas color looking sauce. Turn up my heat just a titch there. Okay. And now we are going to make the ricotta. So this is a vegan lasagna. So instead of dairy-based ricotta, we are going to make one with tofu. So I've got my immersion blender. That's what this stick right here is. That in. Oh, Lisa, can I have I need the wand from the immersion blender. I think it was with the, yep, do you see it? No, where did oh, it's right here. I got one. We're good. All right. So in my container here, I've got a block of extra firm tofu that has been drained. I've got a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, a tablespoon of coconut aminos, which is just a lower sodium version of soy sauce. You could use regular soy sauce or low sodium soy sauce or miso paste in here if you wanted to. And then I've got a teaspoon of basil, dried basil. So we're going to use our immersion blender to just kind of blend all together. Okay, perfect. So that's kind of what we're going for. We just want it to be, doesn't have to be completely smooth, but just somewhat smooth and everything incorporated together. Right. So next what we're going to do is we're going to grab that sauce. So typically you'd let that sauce cook for, you know, a good 5-10 minutes. We're coming up on time here, so we're just going to go ahead and go with it. And it's totally fine. It's going to cook in the oven, so I'm not too worried about it. But I'm going to take a hearty scoop of that sauce. I've got a 9-by-13 casserole dish here. And this sauce is just going to help keep the noodles from sticking. Okay. So this dish is really nice because it comes together pretty quickly and you're getting a lot of good veggies and a lot of good protein from that tofu ricotta. Okay, so I'm just going to take the noodles and make a layer across my dish here. I'm going to have to break this one for it to fit fully in. And I'll just stick that little guy right there. And now what I'm going to do is do layers of alternating sauce, noodles, and ricotta. So I'm just going to take sauce here. And I think I mentioned this before, but we're using 2 jars of pasta sauce. So you want about 6 cups of sauce to start with here. The recipe does suggest blending the veggies, the peppers, the spinach, and the mushrooms in a food processor to get a smoother texture and consistency. I like the veggie chunks and the texture that this provides, but you might want a more smoother, texture in your dish. So go ahead and use that food processor. I'm taking about a third of the tofu ricotta, and I'm just trying to evenly space that across this dish here. Okay, a little bit more. So yeah, so with the blender and the veggies, if you have kiddos that don't love texture, that like have texture issues, blending it could be a way to get them to love this dish. This is a hit with pretty much everybody. Nobody realizes that it's actually a vegan or plant-forward lasagna. Most people can't tell the difference. Okay, so we've got that layer down. We're gonna add the next couple layers of lasagna noodles. I'm gonna break this one. See if I can break it in half long ways. Man, pretty successful. Here we go. It's nice to fill in that little piece here. There you go. There, and then we're just gonna repeat with our sauce. That go in. And it looks like I'm not gonna have enough noodles to do another layer. So what we're gonna do is add our sauce here. We're going to top with a couple more just dollops of the ricotta. Finish that off. And then once we have this spread out, what we would do is cover it with foil. So some tin foil, pop it into a 350-degree oven for about 35 minutes or until it's fully cooked through and the top is a little brown and bubbly. If you want to prep this ahead of time, you can just cook take this, put it in a foil pan. So assemble it in a foil pan and stick it in your freezer uncooked. And then make sure it's wrapped tightly in foil. And then when you want to cook it, it will take about an hour and a half at that 350 to cook fully instead of that 35 minutes. You can also cook it just like this, cut it into individual pieces after it has cooled, wrap those individual pieces, pop those into your freezer, and then you've got individual lasagna dinners ready to rock and roll. So those are our 4 recipes. Did want to check in on our chia seed pudding. Hey, Lisa, can I have that dish real quick and just show you what that looks like? And then I will let you get on with the rest of your evening. Okay, so as you can see here, thank you. I was just looking for that. It has started to, well, let's see, you can't see because I had not the camera adjusted. There you go. It started to gel a little bit. So it's much thicker than when we first started. If we let this sit for another like hour or so, or overnight, it's going to thicken up even more. If once it's sat for another hour or overnight, it feels a little too thick to you and your texture preferences, just add a little bit more liquid to it. Or if it's too thin, just add a little bit more chia seeds. You can kind of play around with that. And again, this recipe, don't freeze it. It's usually just like a good batch ahead, larger volume recipe that then you can eat throughout the week. I just wanted to let everybody know that we are doing a free cooking class series for middle school kids starting in July. So the week of July 17th is when we start. We're doing 4 classes and then a week of free farm camp. The program's completely free. If you know middle school aged kids that you think would like to learn some cooking, be paired up with a medical resident physician partner as their buddy and friend throughout the program, please scan this QR code or send an email to nutritionbuddies@trinityhealth.org, and I can get you more information. We're excited about this program. Space is limited, and we just wanted to make sure that you all, since you're excited about these classes, also know about it and you can share with folks that you know. All right, with that, we are a couple minutes over, so I will let everybody go. If we didn't get your question answered, please shoot us an email, lifestylemedicine@trinity-health.org. We will make sure your question gets answered, and then look for the recording and all of the recipes and some handouts on the website within the next week. Okay. Thanks for joining me. Wonderful to spend time with you all again, and hope you all have a wonderful rest of the month. Take good care.